I never thought my marriage would fall apart over a rabbit. But when I look back, I realize it wasn't about the rabbit at all. It was about something much bigger, something that had been festering beneath the surface for a long, long time. It started when my kids, Brian and Lily, found a tiny wild bunny near our back porch. They were ecstatic, treating it like a fragile treasure. "Daddy, can we keep him? Please." Brian clutched the tiny creature against his chest, his blue eyes pleading. Lily, bouncing on her toes, added, "He doesn't have a mommy. We have to help him." I knelt down, running a hand over the rabbit's soft fur. It was small, sure, but not a newborn. Probably old enough to fend for itself. I sighed. "I know you want to help, guys. But he already has a home out there. If we keep him, he won't learn how to survive." Their faces fell instantly. "But we can help him," I added quickly. "We can find a really safe place to let him go. Somewhere with lots of bushes where he can hide." Brian frowned but nodded, his little fingers stroking the rabbit's ears. Lily, on the other hand, was already sniffling. "Will he be okay?" she whispered. I forced a smile. "I promise." They didn't fight me on it after that, but they made me swear we'd find the safest place possible. The problem was, I had a work call when it was time to let the bunny go. I worked from home most of the week, and my schedule was packed. So, I asked my wife, Sarah, to take care of it. "Just take him to the thorn bushes at the edge of the property," I told her. "Predators won't get to him there." She barely looked up from her phone. Yeah, sure." Something about her tone rubbed me the wrong way, but I ignored it. That was my mistake. 15 minutes later, I heard the front door slam open. Lily was sobbing. Brian ran in behind her, his face red and furious. "Mama made us let the bunny go in the yard," he choked out. "A hawk took it." My stomach twisted. "Wait, what?" Lily buried her face in my shirt. "It screamed, Daddy." The bunny screamed. I shot up from my chair and stormed into the living room. Sarah was there, leaning against the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. "What the hell did you do?" I demanded. She barely glanced up. "Jesus, calm down. It's just a rabbit." I felt my hands clench into fists. "I told you to take it to the bushes. You knew there were hawks. It was faster this way." She shrugged. "Besides, it's nature. Hawks gotta eat too." I stared at her, my pulse hammering. I knew Sarah could be indifferent sometimes, but this? She knew how much it meant to the kids. She knew they were watching. And she just didn't care. Brian wiped his nose with his sleeve and glared at her. "You're a bunny killer." And just like that, it stuck. For the next few days, neither of them would talk to her. Every time she tried, Brian would mutter, "Bunny killer." Lily refused to let her tuck her in at night. At first, I thought Sarah would apologize, try to fix things. But instead, she doubled down. "You're turning them against me," she snapped one night while we were getting ready for bed. I blinked. What? You should be telling them to stop disrespecting me." "I have told them to stop," I said evenly. "But you don't get to decide how they feel. They watched you throw that rabbit to its death, Sarah. It's nature." She shot back. "What? Am I supposed to shield them from reality forever?" I stared at her. "They're 4 and 5. She scoffed and climbed into bed, turning her back to me. "Whatever. This is your fault." I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. And for the first time, I wondered if I even liked my wife anymore. ####. Things didn't get better. Sarah started avoiding the kids. She spent more time locked in the bedroom, glued to her phone. When she did talk to them, it was forced, almost like she was reading from a script. One night, while I was making dinner, Brian tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy?" he whispered. I crouched down. "What's up, bud?" He hesitated, chewing his lip. "Mama has a special friend." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "What do you mean?" He glanced toward the hallway like he was afraid she'd hear him. "A man comes over when you're at work. She says we can't tell." My breath caught. "When does he come over?" "On Saturdays." Brian shifted uncomfortably. "She gives us extra tablet time so we don't bother them." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I forced myself to smile. "Thanks for telling me, buddy." That night, I couldn't sleep. Sarah crawled into bed beside me, sighing like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. "You okay?" she murmured. I stared at the ceiling. "Yeah, lies. I was anything but okay." While she drifted off beside me, I lay awake, my thoughts racing. I thought about the late nights, the sudden coldness between us, the way she'd been avoiding me and the kids. And then, I thought about the bunny. How easy it had been for her to throw it away, to watch it die and not feel a thing. I needed to know the truth. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I ordered security cameras. The security cameras arrived 2 days later. I had them shipped to my office instead of home. I didn't want Sarah getting suspicious. That night, while she was out for one of her girls' nights, I set them up. One in the living room, one in the hallway, one pointed at the front door, and, most importantly, one in our bedroom. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe Brian had misunderstood. Maybe it was just a friend dropping by. Maybe Sarah wasn't cheating. Maybe I was just paranoid. But deep down, I already knew. The first Saturday after setting up the cameras, I made sure to leave the house early, like usual. I kissed my kids, patted our dog on the head, and told Sarah, "See you later." She barely looked up from her phone. That afternoon, while sitting in my car outside a coffee shop, I checked the footage. And there he was. Tall, dark-haired, younger. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him at first. Then it hit me. Zach, one of Sarah's former coworkers. I remembered him from years ago, back when Sarah still invited me to her company's holiday parties. He was younger than her, maybe by 10 years. A new hire she had mentored before quitting to be a stay-at-home mom. I barely noticed him at the time. Now, he was standing in my living room like he belonged there. My stomach twisted as I watched Sarah greet him with a hug. It wasn't a casual hug. It was slow, familiar. Her hands curled into his shirt, her body pressing against his like it was muscle memory. Then she kissed him. I felt my pulse hammer in my ears. I kept watching, my hands clenched into fists. They sat on the couch, whispering, laughing. Then Sarah pulled him toward the bedroom. I slammed my laptop shut. I didn't need to see more. I sat there for a long time, my hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. I should have felt angry. Rage. I should have wanted to storm back into that house and throw her out. But all I felt was hollow. Like something inside me had finally given up. I don't know how long I sat there, trying to breathe through it. At some point, I realized my hands were shaking. Then, something clicked. On the footage, before they went into the bedroom, I noticed Zach's hand. The way he placed it on Sarah's stomach. The way she didn't push him away. The way she just smiled, brushing his hand aside like she was embarrassed. Something cold settled in my gut. I thought back to her mood swings. The way she had been snapping at me. The way she had been avoiding me. How she had barely tried to hide her happiness when I told her I'd be out of town for work. I ran a hand down my face. Sarah was pregnant. And there wasn't a chance in hell that baby was mine. I had to be sure. I had to know how long this had been going on. If this was a recent thing, or if she'd been lying to me for years. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I bought a GPS tracker and hid it in her car. The following Saturday, while I pretended to be out of town, my sister and her husband parked near our house and followed her. "She's not going to her usual bar," my sister texted. "She's driving out of town." I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then, finally, she met up with him. They're at a diner. Zach is rubbing her stomach. I felt sick. This wasn't just some casual affair. This wasn't just her sneaking around for sex. This was something bigger. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife. I was dealing with a woman who had already decided to erase me from her life. And the worst part? She had planned to do the same to our kids. I barely slept that night. Sarah crawled into bed next to me, sighing like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. I lay stiff beside her, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning. "You okay?" she murmured. I forced my voice to stay steady. "Yeah, lies." She shifted closer, resting her head on my shoulder like she used to when things were good. My stomach twisted. How many times had she done this after being with him? How many times had she looked me in the eye and lied? I clenched my jaw and let her fall asleep. The next morning, I called my lawyer. He was an older guy, gruff, with the kind of no-nonsense attitude that made it clear he had seen things. When I told him what was going on, he let out a low whistle. "Well, damn," he muttered. "That's a hell of a mess. Can you help me?" A slow smile spread across his face. "Son, this is the kind of case I love working on." We got to work. I gathered everything, the security footage, the GPS logs, the text from my sister. My lawyer ate it up. "This is open and shut," he said, flipping through the files. "She's done." A few days later, Sarah got served. I was working from home when it happened. The sheriff pulled up in the driveway, walked to the front door, and rang the bell. I watched from my office window as Sarah answered in her leggings and oversized sweater, her hair in a messy bun. She took the envelope, frowning. Then she opened it. Her face drained of color. She looked around wildly, like she expected to see me standing there. I didn't move. A few seconds later, she stormed inside. "You're divorcing me?" she shrieked, slamming the papers down on my desk. I didn't look up from my laptop. "Yeah, you can't do this." I exhaled slowly, finally meeting her eyes. "I can, and I am." Her expression twisted. "You don't have proof of anything." I tilted my head. "Don't I?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She knew. I had her. She sucked in a shaky breath, then went for her usual tactic, manipulation. "You're really gonna ruin our family over one mistake?" I let out a cold laugh. "One mistake? You've been screwing him for months. You're pregnant with his kid. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't buy it. "Not anymore. You don't have to do this," she whispered. "We can fix things." I leaned back in my chair, watching her. "You didn't want to fix things when you were in bed with him." Silence. Her hands trembled as she picked up the papers. "I won't leave the house," she said suddenly. "It's mine too." I shrugged. "We'll see what the court thinks about that." She stared at me for a long moment, breathing hard. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out of my office. A minute later, I heard the bedroom door slam shut. I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face. This was just the beginning. Sarah didn't take the divorce filing well. At first, she avoided me. No yelling, no pleading, just silence. She locked herself in the bedroom for hours, only coming out to eat or pretend to interact with the kids. If I hadn't known better, I might have thought she was genuinely upset about losing our family. But then, the real Sarah showed up. It started small, slamming doors, leaving dirty dishes in the sink for me to clean, accidentally unplugging my work computer. Then she turned her focus to the kids. One morning at breakfast, she set her coffee down with a dramatic sigh. "Daddy wants to break up our family," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound believable. "He doesn't love Mommy anymore." Brian froze, his spoon halfway to his mouth. His little face scrunched up. "But you don't love us anymore," he said. Sarah stiffened. "That's not true, baby. I love you so much." Brian narrowed his eyes. "Then why do you want a new baby instead of us?" Sarah's mouth opened and closed. Lily pushed her plate away. "I don't want a new baby," she whispered. "I want Daddy." I saw it then, the moment Sarah realized she had lost them. Her face twisted, and without another word, she shoved her chair back and stormed out of the kitchen. That was the last time she tried to play the good mother. After that, she stopped pretending. One night, I heard her whispering on the phone in the bedroom. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but she wasn't exactly quiet. "He thinks he's gonna win?" "Please," she scoffed. "I'll make his life a living hell before I let him take everything." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. She wanted war? Fine. A few days later, she made her move. I was in my office when I heard the knock at the door. Not a sheriff this time. Cops. Sarah stood behind them, looking small and fragile, her arms wrapped around herself like she was terrified. The officer in front cleared his throat. "Sir, we received a report of domestic violence from your wife." My stomach turned. Sarah sniffled dramatically. I don't feel safe here anymore." I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice even. "I haven't touched her." One of the cops gave me a hard look. "Mind if we take a look around?" "Go ahead," I said, stepping aside. They searched the house, checking for any signs of a struggle. There was nothing. Because, of course, she was lying. Then, Sarah made a mistake. She was so caught up in her act that she didn't notice my laptop sitting open on my desk. The screen displayed the live feed from the security cameras. I caught the officer's eye. "Mind if I show you something?" Sarah's face dropped. I clicked play. First, the clip from 5 minutes before they arrived, Sarah, pacing in the bedroom, smirking as she whispered into her phone. "He won't know what hit him." Then, the footage of her storming into my office the day she got served. The screaming, the threats, the moment she admitted she wasn't leaving the house no matter what. The officer watching let out a slow exhale. "That's enough." Sarah's eyes went wide. "Wait, ma'am, turn around." The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound I'd heard in years. Sarah was still screaming when they led her out the door. "This isn't fair. He set me up." The officer escorting her barely reacted. "You have the right to remain silent," he said flatly. "I suggest you use it." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching as they pushed her into the back seat of the squad car. She locked eyes with me, wild and desperate. "You'll regret this," she shrieked. "You can't do this to me." I didn't say a word. I just watched as they drove her away. The house was silent. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. But I knew it wasn't over yet. Sarah made bail the next morning. She came back acting like she was the victim. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she walked through the door, her hair messy, her eyes red-rimmed. "I can't believe you did this to me," she whispered, voice trembling. "I was your wife." I stirred my coffee, letting the spoon clink against the mug. "You were. Now you're just the woman who cheated on me, lied to the cops, and tried to ruin my life." She took a shaky step closer. "We made mistakes, Mark. But you're throwing away everything." I set my coffee down and finally met her eyes. "No, you did that the second you let him into our bed." Her lips quivered. "You're heartless." I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "No, Sarah. I just finally see you for who you are." She inhaled sharply like she wanted to argue, but then she noticed something: the kids. Brian and Lily stood in the hallway, peeking around the corner, their small faces filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time: relief. Sarah froze. Maybe she thought she could still manipulate me. Maybe she thought she could twist the story. But she hadn't expected them to be watching. That was the moment she truly lost. Her expression hardened. "Fine," she spat. "You want a war? You got it." And that's exactly what I prepared for. The divorce was brutal. Sarah fought tooth and nail for everything: money, the house, even partial custody of the kids. But my lawyer was relentless. The security footage, the GPS logs, the false police report, everything worked against her. The judge hated her. By the end, she had nothing left. She walked away with her personal belongings, a small financial settlement, and the car I had bought for her. The house? Mine. Full custody of Brian and Lily? Mine. The most shocking part? She barely even fought for them. The moment she realized she wasn't getting what she wanted, she just gave up. When she came to collect her things, she didn't even look at the kids. Lily stood at the top of the stairs, hugging her stuffed bear. Her voice was so soft I almost didn't hear it. "Mommy." Sarah didn't answer. She just yanked her last bag onto her shoulder and walked out the door. Lily burst into tears. Brian pulled her into his arms, rubbing her back like a tiny adult. "It's okay, Lily," he whispered. "We don't need her." Sarah never came back. A few months later, I heard through the grapevine that she had the baby. After the divorce, she left town, following Zach wherever he had transferred. But, according to a mutual acquaintance, things didn't go as planned. Zach wasn't interested in playing daddy. By the time the baby was born, he was already seeing someone else. He blocked her number and cut her off completely. Poetic justice. I don't know where she is now. I don't care. All I care about is Brian and Lily. The three of us have been rebuilding slowly, but surely. The first few months were hard. Lily cried for her mother at night. Brian acted tough, but I caught him staring at old family photos, his little hands clenched into fists. I told them the truth, not all of it, but enough. That their mother had made bad choices. That it wasn't their fault. That I wasn't going anywhere. And little by little, things got better. One evening, months after everything, we were in the backyard watching the sunset. The kids were chasing fireflies, their laughter echoing through the air. Lily ran up to me, giggling as she cupped her hands together. "Daddy, look. A firefly." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "That's amazing, sweetheart." Brian grinned at me. "You okay, Dad?" I looked at them, the two people who mattered most. The ones Sarah had been so willing to throw away. "Yeah," I said, exhaling. "I think I finally am."